the door slammed, and he was left alone here in the pitch dark. Then somebody tipped him on the shoulder and he heard someone say, "Haha, it's only two of us down here now." Good evening, everybody. Sinead here, on my hunt for some of the most haunted pubs in London. And today I'm going to take you on a journey of some of the spookiest and most haunted pubs in London. Now, we are in Jack the Ripper territory. I'm in the Whitechapel area, and it just occurred to me recently, I have never actually taken you inside the 10 Bells pub. Now, the 10 Bells pub is synonymous with Jack the Ripper history, and it has its history dates back to 1730. Now, the 10 Bells was originally the 8 bells, and it was named after the bells in the church tower next door, which is the wonderful Nicholas Hawkmoor Church, Christchurch, Spitalfields. But of course, when they updated and redid their bell tower and added additional bells, they also changed their name to the 10 Bells. And it's going to be right behind me here, you guys. And look how ominous and spooky it looks at this hour of the night. It's such an incredible place to visit. So we're going to head inside, and I'll tell you a bit more about the spooky hauntings inside the 10 Bells pub. On the corner of Fournier Street and Commercial Street is one of the most famous pubs in the East End. Ladies and gentlemen, an integral part of Jack the Ripper's investigations. We suspect that all 5 of Jack the Ripper's victims at one time would have drank inside this building, as would, most likely, Jack the Ripper himself have drank in the building. Now, the 10 Bells pub, ladies and gents, was the pub where Annie Chapman was drinking, well, reputedly at 5 a.m. in the morning. And then she turned the corner down this incredible street, Fournier Street, if I don't manage to kill myself in the meantime. And a couple of hours later, she was brutally murdered by Jack the Ripper at the back of 29 Hanbury Street. Now, Annie Chapman was drinking in here. Mary Jane Kelly, the final victim of Jack the Ripper, was drinking in the 10 Bells pub the night she was brutally murdered, right underneath this building here. She was murdered at 13 Miller's Court on Dorset Street. But not only that, they also say in the spring of 1888, Elizabeth Stride, who would have been the 3rd victim of Jack the Ripper, she was thrown out of the pub for being drunk and disorderly. But it not only has connections with Jack the Ripper, which they recreated it for the From Hell movie with Johnny Depp. It's also the London Dungeons exhibit for Jack the Ripper. But inside the 10 Bells has been a lot of ghosts and sightings and terribly strange and terrifying occurrences in the building. Haunted by so many ghosts, and the one that's most mischievous is said to be Annie Chapman. And she is said to occasionally touch customers' arms and tug at their arms to remind them it's time to leave the pub. I feel like she feels like a close connection to the area. But one other man who is frequently seen inside the 10 Bells is a Victorian landlord. And people who have lived on the 3rd floor, now I have spoken to someone in particular who actually stayed in there for 3 weeks, and he said it was so horrendously haunted. He left there after 3 weeks because he woke up in the middle of the night with somebody strangling at his neck, and he was so terrified of the dark entity inside there. Now, is that the Victorian landlord? Because over the years, people have reported that at nighttime when they wake up, they have this uneasy feeling that someone is beside them in their bed, and they've seen a ghostly figure lying beside them inside the bed. But another story relates to a Victorian baby that died under very suspicious circumstances on the top floor. And when all this paranormal activity was being recorded, they decided to bring in a psychic, and the psychic refused to enter the room because she said that that baby had been brutally murdered in the top floor. So one of many ghosts, and I want to show you inside because it has pretty much the same interior as it did in 1888, even down to the mosaics on the wall. Let's see where the girls used to hang out here in Victorian London in Whitechapel. In we go. Let's have a look. at the Ten Bells pub. It's quite busy tonight. These gorgeous people were on my tour earlier on. Look at the Victorian motifs, you guys. Isn't it stunning? Love this pub. Even down to the mosaics on the wall. This is original. So apparently the lady was just telling me as we're coming down the stairs, people come in here and they feel like they're being pushed or they feel a cold breeze along the stairs. But years ago, in here, there was so much Jack the Ripper memorabilia on the walls and original newspaper clippings from that era. But thankfully, they actually removed them just to keep them safe. But this is the downstairs, said to be the most haunted part of the Jack the Ripper pub and the Ten Bells. Now, but between the Victorian dressed man, Annie Chapman is said to be very mysterious in here, and she doesn't like people coming in here at all. Is Annie Chapman's soul not at peace yet until we find out who Jack the Ripper is? That's what I often wonder. So this incredible place, Victorian in nature still. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. The Ten Bells pub in Whitechapel. I'll just have a look around here. To think these girls were drinking gin in here the night they were brutally murdered. What an incredible place. I always recommend the Ten Bells, but I certainly wouldn't be happy staying there. Most of the activity is said to take place upstairs in the top rooms. But could you imagine waking up and seeing a ghostly figure lying beside you in the Victorian pub in your accommodation? That is the Ten Bells and the stunning Christchurch Spitalfields, ladies and gents, where it gets its name. But next on to our other day, let's head up to North London is coming up next, folks. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing in the courtyard of St. Sepulchre without Newgate Church. Stunning history in this area. Today, the highlight of this tour, I'm going to end up in one of the most haunted pubs in London. So I wanted to start by showing you one of the oldest churches in this area. This is St. Sepulchre Church without Newgate. But what's most interesting about there is if you head inside this stunning church, you will see in a glass case on the altar what is called the execution bell. Now, the execution bell, ladies and gents, is closely connected with executions that took place from the Old Bailey. This is the Old Bailey. Right now it's the highest criminal court in the land, but it was also on the former site of what was known as Newgate Prison, where the last public execution in this country took place in 1868. Let me just show you first this sign that you will see when you walk down here on Newgate Street. The site of Newgate demolished in 1777. So getting back to the night before the very public execution, which took place across the road here, and I will bring you there in a moment, I want to get back to that church. And on the altar of that church, you have the execution bell. And at midnight, the night before execution, it is said in the 17th and the 19th centuries, the clerk of this church was responsible for ringing it outside Newgate Prison the night before the execution. And in a rather depressing rant, this is what he said. And imagine listening to this knowing you are facing death the following morning. All you that in the condemned hole do lie, prepare you for tomorrow you shall die. Watch all and pray, the hour is drawing near, that you before the Almighty must appear. Examine well yourselves, in time repent, that you may not to eternal flames be sent. And when St. Sepulchre's bell tomorrow tolls, the Lord above have mercy on your souls. Past 12 o'clock. So the bells in the morning as well, not only did they announce christenings and baptisms and weddings, the bells of the church were also rang to announce executions as the condemned felons were brought to the Tyburn trees situated at Marble Arch. But today, the pub I'm interested in is a pub that was built in 1869 and is reputed to be the most haunted pub in London. Ladies and gentlemen, with some amazing curiosities inside, this is the incredible Viaduct Tavern. But I want to take you inside just to show you how stunningly beautiful this was, and quite a few very unusual stories of drinking and patrons, both living and dead, in the Viaduct Tavern. Now first I'll tell you the stories in just a moment. Just want to show you the stunning interior of this pub. Look at this amazing place, you guys. One of the last remaining gin palaces left in London. Now, it did attract a rather unruly set of customers, and even the landlady didn't trust them, and she wouldn't trust her own bar staff. So one of the more amazing features inside this establishment, you guys, is this gin booth, or this toll booth, that's situated right at the back of the pub. Now I want to show you this. Look at the stunning stained glass. So just to give you an idea, even the landlady didn't even trust her own bar staff. So what she would do is she would sell gin tokens inside this booth. All the money that was exchanged inside in the establishment had to be exchanged for tokens inside this booth. Now another story features the incredible sculptures of this area, which are right up on top. And I wanted to show you some of these. These are allegedly, according to Lorenzo, the bartender, the executioner judges that would have condemned hundreds and hundreds of people to death in the Old Bailey and indeed in Newgate prison. This particular judge is said to be the one that haunts, just 1 second, he didn't want us to talk about him, he sent the ambulance our way. This is the one that is said to haunt the pub, the spectral vision. Now apparently there is a mischievous ghost in the pub. If you turn around, your drink that you have spent money on will disappear. Now upstairs there is a lot of stories about paranormal activity. Allegedly a prostitute was murdered upstairs, and allegedly it was also an opium den for a period of time. Now one of the more famous stories, or ghost stories in the area, were two builders who were laying a carpet upstairs, and this happened in the 1990s. And as they were upstairs about to lay that carpet, one of the builders got a tap on his shoulder, and all of a sudden the roll of carpet they were about to lay immediately levitated into the air and crashed down on the floor seconds later. Suffice it to say, those builders were terrified out of their wits and refused to lay the carpet not long after. But I'm going to take you down to the most haunted part of this stunning establishment, ladies and gents. We're going to head down to what were, and allegedly, prison cells under the building. Now I'm going to leave it up to you to decide exactly whether they are or not. Lorenzo's been great here. He's been helping me out and bringing me downstairs and whenever I need to go. But here we have a notice of execution. So just one of those amazing places in London that you cannot afford to miss when you visit. Now let's head downstairs into the cellars, ladies and gents. So I'm just going to follow Lorenzo down, you guys, and I want to show you right down here these alleged prison cells, ladies and gents. But where do they come from? Are they part of the old Gilsborough Street Contour Prison, or are they part of the Old Bailey? Now I'll let you decide. We know that they have had mediums have come in here, and they have been overwhelmed with the sense of a presence in the area, allegedly collapsing at the feeling of so much spiritual activity. Now, as you can see, it's obviously the beer cellar right now, But look at this noose just as we head in. Now he's gonna light some candle for us to give us the full effect, you guys. But this is desperately, desperately creepy in here. Thank you, Lorenzo. Now, the other ghost story we heard of that took place in here is a former landlord came down here one night, and when he was here, all of a sudden the lights completely went out, the door slammed, and he was left alone here in the pitch dark. Then somebody tipped him on the shoulder and he heard someone say, "Haha, it's only two of us down here now." Now, Lorenzo was just in here with me. Thank you, Lorenzo, for the dramatic effect. I am getting a little bit creeped out, actually. Lorenzo told me that ordinarily it's never this cold in here. And there is a little flicker of the lights as well, ladies and gents. And they also said they had a flood last night here. And over the years, paranormal activity is always associated with flooding. Now, we know that a tributary of the Fleet that runs under this building. So this is one section. Now, allegedly, this was used, and everything I'm saying is allegedly, ladies and gents. Please don't put me up on this. These are all ghost stories. That this was used for throwing down scraps of food to the prisoners that were inside these prison cells. Now, an incredible place, and if you're lucky enough to be in here, it is very, very eerie. I can absolutely assure you. Now, let me take you back out again, and I just want to show you there's one other cell. Let's see if we can get inside. Lorenzo, thank you so much. Now, this one is where the mediums were overwhelmed with noises and feelings of a presence. And in here, it is pretty creepy. I am not going to further too much further in there. I really don't, I feel at unease here. So I think that you guys would be pretty impressed or pretty horrified or pretty terrified by this incredible place. Now, prison cells or not, there's definitely something happening down here. I'm just going to bring you right back here again into this particular one. And Lorenzo's there. Thank you, Lorenzo. This one really gets the chills in my bones, ladies and gents. Haunted or not, prison cells or not, I'll leave that to you. But it does seem very coincidental. Why are there prison cells at the basement of this building, right between two of the biggest Victorian prisons in London? Ladies and gentlemen, that is the incredible Viaduct Tavern, one of the oldest gin palaces in London, and reputedly the most haunted. Now, our next adventure, ladies and gents, I'm standing in front of the Spaniard's Inn, which is in Hampstead, frequented over the years by the likes of Keats, Lord Byron, in recent times the likes of Harry Styles, because he lives right next door. And not only that, it's not only frequented by very famous people that are alive, it's also got some very famous ghosts. And we're going to head inside a pub that has been trading for over 500 years. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to this charming and stunning pub here in Hampstead. This is the Spaniard's Inn. So it's a little difficult to film in here, ladies and gents, because I'm in lunchtime, but this is one of the beautiful snug areas of the Spaniard's Inn. And this one in particular has been reserved today, but we're going to have a look around. Now, it's a little difficult to get actual footage inside, but this Grade 2 listed building dates back to 1585, and it once formed the entrance to the Bishops of London estate, and a haven for literary greats over the centuries. Amongst its most notable patrons, of course, was Lord Byron. Keats is said to have actually written his Ode to a Nightingale poem right in this very back courtyard, ladies and gentlemen. Now, isn't it so quaint and beautiful here? Bram Stoker mentioned the Spaniard's Inn in his book Dracula, And with over 500 years of history, are we naive to believe that there couldn't be some spooky entities in the building? Now, we're going to start with the original name of the pub. It was named after two brothers, actually, who owned the building. And their names were Francesco and Juan Pororo. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Pororo. And I believe that's Harry Styles' house over there, actually. And these brothers were inseparable and the best of friends, and they spent all their time together. Nothing could tear them apart, of course, until a very beautiful woman came along on the scene. They both fell in love with her, and one actually, tragically, invited his brother to a duel, challenged him to a duel, and one lost his life in that duel, and he was buried nearby the Spaniards Inn, and it is said he still haunts the area in mourning for his lost life and his brother, and all the time that he had spent mourning over this lady. But this beautiful back courtyard is also said to be frequented by the actual ghost of Dick Turpin himself. He is said to have lived and been born inside this pub, which is not entirely untrue. A lot of the locals dispute that, but some suggest it could be true because his father actually was the landlord of the pub when he was originally born. And Dick Turpin is said to still haunt this pub. He used to stable his horse out the back here, and horse hooves are regularly heard in the background here. And he is said to saddle up and be seen on the main road here and heading into this courtyard, Dick Turpin himself, the famous highwayman. And he himself dismounts his horse in this courtyard and walks right through the door and actually disappears. Now, one other spectre haunts the interior of the pub, and that is said to be that of the White Lady. Now, the White Lady is not an uncommon spirit that we've seen in many, many pubs and many hauntings all over the UK. But she, in fact, is said to be the lady that they both lusted over, the Pororo brothers. One and his tragic life, his brother Francesco. So Dick Turpin, the White Lady, and Juan Pororo, the ghosts of the pub of the Spaniards Inn here in Highgate. Can you hear the clapping of hooves of Dick Turpin's horse? I haven't had one too many, so I'm not expecting a tug on the shoulder. You definitely feel there is an energy and a vibe and a presence in the area, but what a stunning backyard. Isn't it amazing? As the rain comes tumbling down. Now, it's quite a wet and dreary day, as you can see, you guys. So this is the perfect day, as we'd call it in Ireland, for the high stool. And the high stool, of course, being the pub. Now, there's one other ghost that's said to haunt the area, and his name was Black Dick, and he was a famous moneylender, and he as well lost his life to tragic circumstances. He was brutally trampled to death right on the main road out here by a horse and carriage, and he himself still arrives, and he eventually made it into the pub, albeit in ghost form, and he is said to tug at patrons' arms when he feels like they've had one too many. So the many ghostly sightings, but with over 500 years of history, it's not surprising that this stunning place wouldn't but have so many of these famous ghosts, and Dick Turpin being the most famous of them all. So let's continue on our pub tour, and we'll move on now to the village of Highgate. Now, having had a stunning walk from the Spaniards Inn up here to the incredible Highgate village, ladies and gents, but one of the more famous residents that lived out around here as well, in Arundel House, which is where the old town hall is now, is Sir Francis Bacon. And Sir Francis Bacon was a very famous philosopher, statesman, but he also dabbled in scientific experiments. And I couldn't leave Highgate without telling you this incredible story. And one of those scientific experiments, he'd come to the conclusion that he believed meat could be preserved by refrigerating it, as we all know, and we all do today. Sorry, just bear with me a second. I'm just going to cross here. And along with another doctor, and his name was Dr. Winterbourne. On a bitterly cold morning in January in 1626, they decided to put this theory to the test, and he purchased a chicken from an old lady up here in Highgate Hill, and he had the chicken slaughtered and plucked, and then he stuffed the carcass with snow. Now, one of those ironic twists of justice was in the pages of history. Bacon caught a severe chill as a result of the refrigeration experiment and was rushed to Arundel House, placed in a damp bed, and within a short while he was soon dead. But as we're coming in here to Pond Square, ladies and gents, this is said to be haunted by a phantom chicken. And the story goes, this beautiful area that's surrounded by amazing homes around here, the story was that one night, a chap called Terence Long was crossing the deserted square when he heard the sound of horses' hooves and the low rumble of carriage wheels. And the next moment he heard a loud raucous shriek, and he looked above and he saw a frenzied chicken flapping its wings, and he looked at it to see where it was coming from. And when he turned, the bird had vanished. And this was in this area, the phantom chicken of Pond Square. So this phantom chicken has paid several visits to this area, and it was seen in the 1960s by a motorist whose car had broken down, and again in the 1970s by a courting couple saying their fond farewells. So on each occasion it dropped suddenly from above and gave a loud and distressed squeal and strutted frantically around and towards them, and then vanished. So that's a rather unique ghost story, ladies and gentlemen. The ghost story of the phantom chicken of Highgate. Was that chicken buried here, I wonder? I believe he had buried the chicken and had found that the refrigeration was complete, but I guess the chicken was so traumatized by his inevitable fate that was the end of him. But look at this gorgeous little area and a beautiful quaint pub there, the Prince of Wales. I wonder, have they seen the phantom chicken? I'm going to head around here in this beautiful village of Highgate. Now, that's the ghost of the phantom chicken. Not entirely pub related, but I couldn't leave without mentioning it to you. Here in Pond Square. Now our next pub in an adventure, ladies and gents, is the wonderful Georgian Tavern. And this is on Fleet Street, and I'll show you the front of the entrance in just a moment. But the George Tavern is haunted by one particular cavalier, and he is actually aptly named George by the staff inside. I want to show you around the front and tell you the history of this pub and show you a little bit inside. So the current building is 1930s, folks, but it stands on a much older tavern that was on the site, which has been frequented by a ghostly manifestation in the shape of a man. And he usually frequents in the basement. And in the 1970s, a group of painters and decorators arrived here to the George to refurbish the establishment. Now, the foreman allotted several tasks to his team of construction workers, and he himself went down the stairs but into the basement. But 20 minutes later, he came racing upstairs, somewhat flustered. Looking deathly pale, he literally came running up to the landlord, and he said to him, "That fella downstairs, governor, he just looked at me and he didn't say nothing. He just stared." And the landlord asked him to describe the man. And he said he was all historical-like, and I guess kind of like them roundheads, he said, and cavaliers. Now the landlord said, "Oh, don't worry about him." He said, "That's the ghost. My wife sees him all the time." Now there has been apparitions of said cavalier, and several times when the staff head down into the basement to change a barrel, they've seen this ghostly figure in the corner, and he very quickly disappears, but they've seen him in its physical form downstairs in this amazing Tudor-esque style building. Now let's see if they're going to be okay about filming inside here, you guys. So the lady's taken me upstairs, and we'll just see if we can get any kind of entity up here or any feeling of kind of, oh, there's a pig. The pig dressed very, very well. It's supposed to be some really random picture of a pig chasing a naked man in here. Look at me upstairs here, you guys. Isn't this exquisite? Love it. I had a word with the lady. She doesn't seem to have experienced any ghostly activity in the basement downstairs. But yes, said to be haunted by a famous cavalier. You have your own little private room here as well, folks. I'm assuming you can use that for meetings and private dinner parties.
Yeah, it's very
wonderful.
Very nice.
So next time you're in London, check out the ghost, the Cavalier ghost. If not, have something to eat here. See if you can experience any paranormal activity in the George Pub on Fleet Street, aka the Strand. Now our final destination today, as you can see, you guys, I'm back here at the very haunted and the most haunted spot in London, Smithfield's Market. And a pub in the area has a long association with the terrifying history of the bodysnatchers. And in order to go through that, I need to show you this incredible hospital here. This is St. Bartholomew's Hospital, which was established in 1123 by Rahir the monk, who was abroad on a pilgrimage. He was a former court jester. He had a visitation through the night from St. Bartholomew, and he had contacted malaria. Now, whether or not he was delusional, and he believed that he had just seen it as a result of being, well, deathly sick from malaria, but he believed that St. Bartholomew had said to him he would spare his life if he returned and built a church. And this is St. Bartholomew's Church, right at the back of Smithfields. If he built a hospital and a church. And if you look closely, there is a statue of Rahir the monk. So one of the watering holes that's in this area is called the Rising Sun. And there's been a pub on this site since the 18th century. But I suppose the most notorious part of its history goes 100 years later, in the 19th century. And the Rising Sun was the pub of the bodysnatchers. Now, the bodysnatchers would all hang around St. Bartholomew's Hospital, hoping for a fresh corpse that might have just passed away or would be brought back in to the hospital, to the mortuary, and they would steal the corpses. And surgeons paid a massive amount of money for these corpses. So this practice went on for years, until eventually the security realized what was happening in the hospital, and they decided to beef up security. But this is where the bodysnatchers, when they sold their corpses, would come to drink. But not content now with, well, their supply has been cut off by the security in St. Bart's, they resorted to murder. And it is said that they used to poison the actual drinks of the patrons in this pub, kill them, drag their bodies out, and bring them over to be sold to the surgeons. So this terrible dark history actually terrified the punters, and to this day it is said to be haunted by a very dark entity inside there. And it is quite creepy in its location. We're probably in one of the oldest laneways. In fact, this is one of the oldest houses still standing in London. But over the years, the pub was actually closed down for a good few years, but in the 1970s it was taken over. And the stories that we do know is that there's a very dark entity and a feeling of foreboding, and an evil drop in temperature inside there. But the most popular stories of two Brazilian girl bartenders who took over a residency here and worked in the pub. And in the middle of the night, they would regularly wake up to this dark figure lying in the bed beside them or sitting on their beds and pulling back the clothes of their actual bedclothes. And several times they woke up in the middle of the night and found all their bedclothes on the other side of the room. And there was another landlady, as early as the 1990s. She headed into the shower in here, took a shower, and heard someone closing and opening the door of her bathroom. And she felt this icy hand just feeling all the way down her back. And it does have a very eerie feeling to it, ladies and gents. So let me just show you the inside of this pub. This is a beautiful rising sun. So to be haunted by that dark entity inside here, right at the back of St. Fields Market. Now it is quite creepy in here. It tends to be quite popular with staff after work dinner crowd. This is the pub that was frequented by the most notorious and terrifying body snatchers of the 19th century. And of course, we know the body snatching era ended with the Anatomy Act, and of course, after the very famous case of Burke and Hare. But can you imagine taking a little seat in here, unsuspecting a body snatcher actually poisoning your drink? And that's the end of you. Incredible place to visit. So that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our haunted pub tours of London. Thank you as always for your continued support, you guys. You've been absolutely amazing. Halloween season is over. We're heading into Christmas season, of course. But I have a lot of nice treats up my arm, up my sleeve rather, for you in the next few days. And I'd like to thank you all so sincerely. I'm so excited about your PayPal donations. And of course, we'll always leave the Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal app underneath. To all of you, to Marie, to John, to Sean, to Michael, to James, to Norma, to Larry, Alyssa, thank you all, guys. You've been absolutely amazing, and I really appreciate all your lovely donations. Thanks for watching, you guys. Happy Halloween. Sinead signing out here at Smithfields Market.